Greetings. I hope everyone is as well as can be, and as folks choose to be and choose to make it. So, just came on very quickly to share. I haven't been on in a while. Obviously, there's a lot going on the planet, and just heard a bit of news, and it just really makes me think. There's definitely a pattern. I observed patterns, and there have been some consistent patterns that have been coming forth, and a lot of confirmation. But it seems one by one by one by one, it has come forth that similar to the pastors and the preachers, and now the cultural icons, conscious, and so on, and now yet some other gurus. I heard of another one today that has allegedly been messing basically with his students. And this is someone in the yoga community that is an icon for his work. And so, long story short, lesson, a continued lesson and life wisdom, which often comes with some butt-kicking lessons. We are in a time where it is up to us to get some lessons as a chocolate people in the chocolate diaspora, and also as humans. And it is this putting of people on pedestals, the constant putting on people on pedestals and romanticizing people. And I get why, I understand, at least to a certain degree, why we do it. But we are continually putting human beings, people, flawed human beings on pedestals. And because of what we desire to see, we rationalize and make justifications for inappropriate behavior, inappropriate sexual advances with students, with young people, young adults, with children, women, many women in different walks of life, but women in our community, yes, our community, we're overlooking things because of what we want to see. And there's enough information and enough different scenarios that has come forth for us at this particular time to see patterns. So while we are holding so fiercely to our chosen preferred religious doctrine, or to our preferred entertainer or pastor or politician, because of what they represent for us symbolically, for what these father figures and these quote unquote leaders represent, we are in a fierce denial on so many levels. The human species and our different groups and subgroups, we are in fierce denial when there are obvious side effects, consequences, and results of specific behaviors. We are in denial. We don't want to believe that our favorite pastor, our guru, our yoga teacher, we don't want to believe that these people could do some of the horrific, inappropriate acts that they are perpetuating on populations that are vulnerable. We just don't want to believe it. And it's to the point, maybe perhaps a mixture of Stockholm Syndrome, fear of our reality crashing down on us, perhaps fear that we have maybe indirectly or naively protected and upheld some of these individuals, maybe because we have family members still inside some of these cults, maybe because we have donated to some of these cults, maybe because these cults look like us, have similar hairstyles, maybe because these cults are vegetarian and vegan, maybe it's because of if we let go of these last remaining icons and we have to admit to the fact that they're flawed human beings and some with some pretty off behavior, then what do we have left? If we admit to some of the horrific acts that are in our very religious texts that have been modified and revised, I don't know how many times, then we're going to have to admit, acknowledge, and then change something. We're going to have to be responsible and accept the fact that we are on our own. We are on our own. As women, as a chocolate diaspora, as humans, we're on our own. We've been following people because of what we want to see, vetting for, putting on a bulletproof vest and going and gunning for, standing to protect folks who we have not lived with for long periods of time, who we are too afraid to ask uncomfortable questions. We're too embarrassed to ask questions. We're too intimidated because people are elders. And so, in a sense, it is, I don't know if I want to say the word good, but it is beneficial that this stuff has been continually coming forward. Hip hop artists, back in the R&B artists, but in this current, in the last few years, hip hop artists, or rounding called hip hop rap artists, politicians, presidents, pastors, imams, rabbis, conscious community leaders, elders who we hold in respect. We've been covering for these people. I'm not here to tell grown folks what to do, but I invite people to ask themselves, why do we cover for these people? Because of what they symbolically represent. And if we have to admit what they're doing, or as individuals, what's been going on, then we'll have to take corrective action. And it's not pretty. It's actually very, very, greetings, it's ugly. And in a sense, I'm glad, not glad in what has happened to people, but I'm glad that it's not just coming from, one woman, one person. It's all coming out in open, so we'll have to admit, and we're still in fierce denial, even when it's in front of our face. I mean, the numbers of people trafficked. If it wasn't for social media and people having cell phones, you most likely would not see the slavery that's still going on. Many of us wouldn't know about the Islamic slave trade, which was much longer and more brutal. There's a lot of stuff that's done in the dark. Many of us wouldn't know about, the stash of information that's in the Vatican. We wouldn't know how some Mother Teresa's, a lot of her resources were spent. You wouldn't know about the raw food high priest, eating raw foods, these cultural icons wearing ankhs and wearing symbols. We're so blinded, and I get it, by what we want to see. But if we can't see the need for discernment and clear critical thinking, before I got out of this hole, right? And the mind is deep. The mind wants to rationalize the positive stuff. The mind wants to rationalize. You want to think, well, but I see babies, and I see home birthing, and I see aunts, and I see locks, and I see black males, and we're coming together. So let's just look at the positive. Let's not look at the negative. And this is a principle. Give thanks for principles, because they're much clearer than people and personalities. People and personalities can play you. And so moving forward, something is needed that can guide you, so you can discern. You can tell when you turn down the volume, you can discern who or what is talking to you at any given point in time. And so you can sit back and observe and watch patterns, so you can tell what is going on, when quite often the communications are coming through a little screen, how people are living on a day-to-day. You can't see who you're sending your money over to. You're sending your money over to ideas and concepts and wishes and desires that you have. But I've gotten and received some butt-kicking lessons I've gotten taken to school. I don't really want to say give thanks for these lessons, because there have been some harsh, a whole nother level of lessons, heartbreaking, lessons. As somebody that likes to remain positive and look at the bright side, I've gotten some reality lessons, right? Being out in the bush and being in the jungle. Predators and snakes live in the jungle. Predators and snakes are a fact of life. And there are predators and snakes in real life, especially in a day and age when you got so much computer graphics, so much editing. If folks could only see, and we're still only seeing barely the tip of an iceberg of what is being portrayed to you through these computer screens. We already know that they're actors and actresses and special effects, but everybody has a camera and editing skills, and people have all different kinds of agendas. So because of how you want to feel, and we're so emotional, and we get taken over by gospel music, and we can be easily manipulated and triggered through trauma and fear, it is not hard to manipulate human beings. So, I mean, just hearing some information about a very well-respected yoga teacher, and I want to say it's shocking in one sense, and another sense, it's not shocking because the pattern has been consistent. It has been non-stop, 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 non-stop. The coming forward of folks who, and just some patterns who have these appetites. Married men with appetites, perpetuating sexual acts on their students, on single mothers, on maybe perhaps women that feel who have been through some kind of life crisis, who may be divorced or widowed. Then also young men who may be on the outs with their father, or at a very pivotal period in their life, young adults that may be crossing from the late teens over into the early 20s. Why we want to think they have it all together? Because they went through some schooling without any real life experience is beyond me, because that's not real. That's the time when many young people, and many of us, if we are very honest, make some of the most critical errors in judgment of our life, trying to do something different than our parents, and seeking for meaning beyond the religions that were given to us, or maybe some of the cultural practices. That's when we get into all kinds of stuff, all kinds of experiments that usually cost us sometimes 25 years off of our life. And in this day and age, you know, everything from pregnancies, unplanned children, STDs, drug use. There's so many errors in judgment because folks think that they're doing something different, or trying to be rebellious, or to do it different without a frame of reference and without distinction. A thorough vetting process. That is one piece of wisdom from this period. Folks require a thorough vetting process, right? Asking uncomfortable questions, doing background checks. And even when you do background checks, you can't see who people are because you may likely not have the opportunity to cross-reference with human beings. You may not be able to cross-reference these character, these personalities, their characters, these religious leaders. You're not able to cross-reference their character and their behavior over time. You can't go back in time and see who their peers are, right? And get a full spectrum and a realistic view that is not full of poems and cultural philosophical rhetoric. There's so much information out here that we're dumbed down and blinded now by information and rhetoric. And we're pretending to not see what we see on every level, on a global scale, amongst the human species, and definitely I can say within the chocolate diaspora. But you know, even as if, for example, as these the pandemic and as these riots come forth, all these conspiracy theories, you know, do we ask ourselves with discernment? Do we just say, if somebody says, okay, let's do blackout, you don't even know who the person is or who the people are. We don't ask for any details. It feels good in the moment and we just follow. We follow blindly. You know, somebody else is doing it, so we just do it. Do we ever stop to ask ourselves, what is there that has been done already? See, all of these predators And you have different sides playing you, whether it's this political party or that political party, this pastor or religion or that one. There are elements of the truth that none of them own. None of us own, and none of them own, right? So we'll say, well, there's truth in these books. Of course, there's truth in these books. We're surrounded by universal principles. But anybody can take these principles and twist them, which has been done and which is being done consistently. Twist them, in particular, when you're suffering or under duress or experiencing natural life crises. When you're in a vulnerable position, it's easy for people to play on your fears and manipulate you. Very highly intellectually, book knowledge smart individuals can be manipulated because when we have been traumatized, often from the time we're children, usually very often sexually, even if young people, boys or girls, male or females, haven't been penetrated, if they've been abandoned by their parents or being abused, it's easy to control someone's thinking through trauma. These are things now that by now we can see these are patterns. If we admit that we're on our own, we'll have to admit that our prescription for healing most likely is going to come from ourselves. And, there's some questions that perhaps, because I'm not here to tell grown folks what to do, it would benefit us to ask, is there anything that I need to give up, in order to be free, to be clear, in order to discern clearly? Can I for a moment consider that this pastor or this high priest, which is a red flag when somebody has to call themselves and give themselves the title of high priest, that have to admit that these people have appetites. And if you find yourself making rationalizations and justifications for these people's behavior, or justifying and making rationalizations for the questions that you have never asked, these are huge red flags. And so if we don't ask questions and if we don't examine character, our own and other people's, then more is going to continue to come forward. But I'm glad this is coming for us, for people to see with their own eyes, right? The patterns are consistent. I question anyone that's going to ask me to suspend my common sense, anyone that's going to have me all emotional and turned out over some music or food, or have me to put a battery pack in my back and running out when one of the most natural things for women to do and mothers to do is to go out and defend. But, if I step back and I think, there have been thousands, these deaths are not new, these public lynchings, and they are public lynchings, but it's not new, right? Do we question the looting? And I get both sides of different rationalizations for looting, but are we considering the people, the family members that still have to go to work? Then in an economic crisis, there's the consideration of potential food shortages. Are we thinking critically? Have we learned any lessons? Do we continue to allow ourselves to be manipulated? Because quite often on one level, and there's different perspectives, we haven't grown up. We haven't learned our lessons. We want to be dependent. If we want to be dependent and don't want to think for ourselves, then we get what we get. We get what we get when we're afraid to think for ourselves. So I'm not going to be long on here. It goes without saying, the time is ripe as people are scared and don't want to take responsibility and don't want to face harsh realities of what we're dealing with, whether that's global warming, whether that's the rape and molestation, whether that's the state of the planet. Folks don't, a lot of us don't want to let go of our vices. We have rationalizations for drugging ourselves and going back to sleep and not taking responsibility. And so these predators and these so-called leaders, they got something for you if we choose to not see what is very clear and in plain view. So it did not feel good, once again, to hear this information about this popular yoga teacher as someone that really finds movement, yoga, African dance, capoeira. It's huge in my toolbox. And no one owns the yoga or the movement. No one owns universal principles or all of this knowledge. Sometimes I think it's amazing. People keep talking about all this knowledge. And sometimes I'm like, this is BS. What knowledge? What knowledge? There are many traumatized individuals that are looking for company, and we want to be comfortable more than we want to grow. And so we have some choices. We have some real choices to make, but one by one by one, and only you can decide. Do you have the luxury? How much more evidence? You know, how much more evidence do we need of character? At this particular point in time, I have zero allegiance to anybody's religion, their outfit, their rhetoric, their gift of gab. I can turn down the volume and look at behavior and consistent patterns only. We do not have the luxury to pretend to not see what we're seeing. The results are speaking louder than people's rhetoric, and they're coming into your DMs with Empress, Goddess, Sister, while quite often, most of the time, it's code words for how can I get into your psyche, your panties, and your pocketbook. No, and I'm not interested. I'm not interested in another leader. That's the problem, because we're lazy. Many of us are lazy. You want a leader to do it instead of you want the leader to change their diet, and then you follow them. Then you don't have to do it. Jesus died for your sins, so you don't have to clean up. You don't have to make decisions. You don't have to do without. You don't have to go through withdrawal from being addicted to narcissistic and toxic abusive relationships. You can stay in them because you're going to get a fresh, brand new body in the afterlife after you abuse and misuse this one, didn't have any discipline with this one, and you just don't want to have to dealing with ourselves. It's easier to stay in these things than deal with ourselves. So, with the greatest of respect. All of it sounds the same to me. All of the rhetoric, all the different camps, all the different outfits, the patterns sound exactly the same. And it is what it is. I'm not in a position to seek anybody's validation, their permission. Being liked is too expensive. Too many children have been molested, abused, too much money has been scammed from people with good intentions off of seeing what we want to see rather than what is. And we are late to the table. We are late to the table on so many different levels. So it's up to you what you're going to do. But I accept in a sense that I am on my own. And I am vetting based on character, not on sweet words. Just today, someone called my sister with a no caller ID. And it sounded like a predator. Now after a while, you can hear the pattern so clearly. Trying to talk to someone, didn't identify themselves, asking pertinent information. Do I know you? It's like we're in a climate that's so dangerous. And when you have someone that sounds like they're an older man with your number, probably looking on social media, people trying to fish for your number. I mean, the predators are at an all-time high. And when people refuse to get this, that tells me that they must be in on it to some degree or another, because there's a lot that we cannot continue to feign ignorance about. And lastly, I'll just move forward by saying this. One of the things that the cult leader I experienced said, and this cult leader said a lot of truth, a lot. The con men, you got several cult leaders right now, various different ages. I'm not going to mention the names. One is a high priest, and one has called themselves numerous names that's exploiting women. But by now, everyone should be able to see some very clearly some clear patterns. A lot of young people are ashamed of STDs or having been violated or having violated people in their family. They have tremendous shame. And so they're looking for some comfort. People are looking for ways not to deal. You got young women walking away from their children. I've seen it in the younger version, and I've seen it in the older version in the high priest. And as I have studied and observed these cults, I have to say, every time I hear, the patterns are so identical that it is amazing and it's astounding. They change their name every 10 seconds. You can't tell who's who. You don't know somebody's legal name. You don't know how the wives came to be there. Everything is secretive. But people are seeing this back to nature thing. It's so much I want to say. I don't care for profanity, but it's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. If you go in the Caribbean, you can see banana trees and all that other stuff. It's like seeing pigeons in New York. It's bullshit. We want lies. We want fantasy. We have a craving to see, people in a full makeover. We want bullshit. We have a craving for the lies. You don't want women that look like themselves, right? We want men to tell us just sweet nothings in our ear in the absence of character. We don't want to be responsible. That's part of it. So we're in denial. We want a fantasy. We want a video game. We want the Real Housewives. We want TV actors to be leaders. You don't want the real stuff because it's corny and it's boring. It's non-eventful. It's you don't want the real food. We want the stuff that tastes like whipped cream and fake meat and fake burgers. So this is what we get. So this cult leader said one of the many things that they said that I couldn't believe was coming out of their mouth. This elder person that's eating raw foods, that has a basketball team. This elder, where his male followers ask him, and female grown adults ask, "What should I say?" Red flag. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to say, high priest? Which thing should I say? Red flag. Is there a lot of stuff going on the planet? Yes. People doing craziness? Yes. This is a time where they're going to scoop up more followers that feel insecure and feel lost and just not wanting to take responsibility and want to deal. This cult leader said, "Do you think people don't know that they're worshiping the devil?" This is the cult leader said. So many things this man said out of his mouth that I was in absolute shock. I was like, who is this person that's speaking? He said, "You think people don't know they're worshiping the devil?" Basically what he was saying, you think people don't know what they're worshiping with their consumption, whether we call it Bible stories, whether you don't call it any story. Your religion is your way of life, what you're consuming, your habits. You think people in willingly choosing, knowing full well, for those that are in full knowledge of who they're in relationship with, when you turn a blind eye, even in the people in the cult, do you think people don't know what we're worshiping, or people don't know what they're worshiping through the addictions, through the choices, right? Worshiping clothes, worshiping materialistic stuff, worshiping porn, worshiping violence. Do you think people don't know? So there's some things for us to consider. And if we are serious, we can sit here and keep waxing poetic and debating, having absolutely useless, worthless debates, late debates. People are so addicted to porn, food drunk, too high and drunk. Where you going? What battles? What revolution? Not in any kind of position of power. No economic assets. No plan, and limited. What's the word I want to say? Limited life skills and resources. Not able to affect change beyond their own selves. No discipline, but talking about a revolution. See, we're playing games. This is BS. This is BS. So there's so many reasons why we're in a position. Some are not our fault, but ultimately our life is our responsibility. So, but they're fakes. It's easy to point our fingers at the fakes, but a lot of us crave the fakes, right? And it's not about the fakes. We keep thinking we're giving these people too much power. We are grossly underestimating the impact of our consumption from what we eat, how we spend our money. Wouldn't that be if we were able to come together more organized and to, let's say, for example, I don't have all the answers, but to go one business by one business and pull our resources away from the beauty industry. Not that we don't like certain hairstyles, but to really make a statement and dry certain companies up. Folks are talking about a blackout, and it sounds positive, but I'm thinking, like, are we putting well thought into this? Because some people still, especially right now, need to run their businesses, especially if you have an independent Black-owned business. So, we get upset when everybody in the so-called group doesn't agree with what we're doing. Everybody has their own role to play. So there are many layers to this onion. It is for us to be responsible. It's for us to be responsible. And just take a big look at who we're putting up on these pedestals and who we're gunning for. Why are we gunning for folks? Why are we caping for folks? As women, why are we caping for folks that keep demonstrating don't care about you? And, FYI, people can sleep with you and not like you, right? So all the women that are protecting these cult leaders and predators, whether in our own family or within the cult, people can sleep with you and not like you, can impregnate you and not like you. So desperate for attention. Well, there's a lot of trauma. It's definitely a time for us to pull back from a lot of our appetites and be still and just focus on working on ourselves. That might be enough to take us through the rest of this lifetime. So more stuff is going to continue, but it's up to us. We're on our own. We're on our own, right? And you can take that and do whatever you need to. So in any event, I hope that folks are well, keeping your thinking caps on, using your discernment more than ever. It's definite time before Labor Day comes back around, before we go into the summer months, and before the temperature switches again, right? When cold season and the equinox and the weather shifts yet again, or folks be busy marching or whatever, so-called protesting. But if folks, have folks gotten their storehouse of goods together, things that you can be eating all year round, fresh food that improves your immune system. Have folks embarked on their personal health and fitness, patterns and routines where there's a commitment to that. Are we still playing games with our health? Are we still not managing our spending? Are we still prioritizing looks and some superficial talent over character and discipline and health? So do we really need a leader to tell us to eat fruits and vegetables? Do you need a leader or political party to tell you how to treat people? We're being played, and we're allowing ourselves to be played yet again. Mass populations, we're allowing ourselves to be played. So I don't know everything, but I know at this point I've seen enough patterns where I could step back and ask questions and be quiet enough to let the answers come to me, right? Because you don't burn yourself up to prove a point to somebody else. You don't hurt yourself and your family members to prove a point to someone else. If anything, are we thinking critically? And it does not appear that we are thinking critically. So it's very easy for us to be played. So you're invited to put your thinking caps on and to use your discernment. I don't know how much more can come. To me, there's nothing else more. I don't know anything else more shocking that can come out of these fake cult leaders. Well, they're not fake. They're real cult leaders. Rationalizing cults, telling folks how they're going to screw them in the backside, right? Unless some folks are just coming late to the table, not doing their research, telling the women what they're going to do to them. They're telling and showing what they're going to do. I guarantee you're still not seeing everything that's being done when they're off camera, whether it's the older high priest or the younger version and versions of these different cults. Everybody's clamoring for a following of folks that want to be irresponsible. But, you may be better off being realizing that you are on your own. And if you're choosing people and not having uncomfortable conversations and too afraid to do a thorough vetting, a thorough background check, being prepared to be uncomfortable and see the things that you may not want to see, then you're going to continue to get more. You're going to get what you're going to get. We're going to get what we're going to get. All right, folks. Take care.